So this is from your quiz on Friday. We're interpreting statistics, okay? Very first question says, a company with 170 employees conducts a survey about the cafeteria. 148 of the employees would like better coffee. What percent of the employees would like better coffee? First, I need to find out the amount of employees, which is 170 employees. I put it as a fraction. I'm going to put the number who wanted better coffee on top. We then divide it as a fraction. So we have 148 divided by 170 gives us 0.8705, blah, blah, blah. To make it a percentage, we multiply by 100, 87%. So 87% of the people want better coffee. You would have got both marks for writing all of that. Okay, an arts and entertainment website. Okay, so we're on question 2. Posts a poll online about public funding for the arts. 73 of poll respondents support increases in funding of the arts. The website sends a letter to the Ministry of Culture saying that 73% of Ontarians support increased funding for the arts. Explain what is wrong with this survey. So we record that. So one thing you could have put is the people responding were already on an arts and entertainment website. So we assume that they already have a bias to support the arts. Oh, what did I put? Oh, sorry. Bias. Bias would have been very helpful. Even if you didn't and you used something else, I would have given it to you. But most of you did not put this. A bias to support the arts. And I would have liked a reason, because on arts website already. Now, what you're going to find out is a lot of times surveys are done like this, where they'll poll general population, and then they'll say 73% of Ontarians believe that. It's technically a legit way to do it if it's completely random, and you can prove that everyone is from that province. Do we have any proof that everyone who visited this website was from Ontario? No. That is another issue. Because it's a website, that means it has access anywhere in the world. So they may have had nobody from Ontario respond to that. They had no criteria to say that these people were or were not from Ontario. So that was another problem with the survey. No proof of location of respondents, I guess. Okay, next question, number 3. Bridget works for an art dealer. She prepares a price comparison chart for her boss, who's thinking of bidding on a painting by a famous artist at an auction. Bridget investigates the reserve and sale price of the comparable paintings by the same artists that have sold at auction recently. Determine the mean and median for the reserve and sale price. That means I need 2 means and 2 medians. So I needed a mean. Actually, we'll do the median here. I needed a median for the reserve and a median for the sale. I also needed, we're probably going to have to use some of the room down here. Not enough room? Okay. Improvise. I wanted also a mean for the reserve, so we'll put a little R here. And we need a mean for the sale price, okay? Now, the median is the middle number in the data. So for the reserve price, I only had 3 numbers, and they pretty much went from lowest to highest. So our median for the reserve was 28,000. I just needed you to pick out the middle number. Same idea for the sale price. They are already ordered from lowest to highest. The middle number is 34. Those were hopefully 2 free marks. Okay. The next part, the mean, which we have a formula on the side here. The mean is the sum of the data divided by the amount of the data. It's also known as the average. So you guys needed to add up all of the reserve prices. So we had reserve price 1, 2, and 3, and then divide by 3. So we have 23,000 plus 28,000 plus 33,000 divided by 3. We got 28,000 again. So our mean for the reserve price was the exact same as the median. Exact same idea for the sale price, 1, 2, and 3. 28,000 plus 34,000 plus 78,000. Divide 3 again, 46.666. So ours was 46,667, 66, whatever you rounded to was fine for our mean for the sale price. That was the 4 marks right there, those 4 different numbers. Now the next question was, which measure should she use for estimating what the painting might sell for? Explain your choice. Many of your answers varied, and if you backed up your answer logically, I may have given it to you, but recall, they're asking what the painting might sell for. We have 2 different prices. Which do you think is more intuitive or a better explanation for what it will sell for, the reserve or the sale price? Reserve. The sale price. Okay? Oh. Paintings have been selling for this much, so that's probably what they're going to sell for. If you said the median or the mean, oh, sorry, I pointed to the wrong one. If you said the median for the sale price, okay, as long as you explained it logically. So one explanation for the median would have been that the third painting that we're looking at is almost like an outlier in the data. It's a very, very large number. So saying that the median might be a good estimate, as long as you backed it up by saying maybe the third price was an outlier or was large, would have been an explanation for the median sale price, okay? So maybe the third price was kind of like an outlier. It was too high in the data, so we're going to choose the middle number. I would have accepted something like that. That's logical. Or if you said the mean because it's the average of all the sale prices, that was also logical. Average of sale prices. Okay. The key word is they wanted to know what it will sell for, not what they estimate the actual value is. So reserve prices of a painting is, if you were to get it appraised or something like that, this is what they value it at. But many times people will pay more than actual value for an item. You'll see that with maybe old cars, if that makes sense to you guys. Old cars a lot of times sell for a lot more than what they're worth. All right, question 4 on the quiz. A salesman for a home installation conducted a telephone poll of the first 25 people from his firm's client list. That's very important. Firm's client list. He asked each person this question, and it's here in the box. Home installation is one of the best ways to reduce your monthly heating bill on a scale of 1 to 7, where 1 is unimportant, 7 is extremely important. How important is it to you to have an adequate home installation? All but 1 responded with a rating of 5 or above. We assume that means relatively important, 5 or above, in terms of their scale of 1 to 7. A salesman wrote that to his manager that 96% of people in our town think that installation is very important. Very first question. Are the survey results valid? Why or why not? First off, 5 out of 7 is 96%. So if you were trying to prove that wrong, that is 96%. Many of you ended up saying it was valid because the percentage was right. That's not what I was looking for. Okay? Are the survey results valid? First, let's talk about who he interviewed. Kieran. So what's special about his clients? They've already had their house insulated. They obviously think it's important because they've already had their houses insulated. So this is already a bias. Am I spelling it wrong again? Yep. I always put A first. This is bias survey because people are from client list. And obviously think it is important. I'm kind of skimping on the answer here because this pen is kind of thick and I don't have a lot of room. Another point is we don't actually know that the client list is from the town. He interviewed the first 25 people on the list. Maybe they were all out of town people. So location of respondents. So that would have been a second possible answer, our first possible answer. How does he start off the question in this survey? What's the very first line? Yes, a statement about how important home insulation is. It says home insulation is one of the best ways to reduce monthly heating bills. Right away, he's telling you that this is important. Could that skew your judgment in whether you think it's important or not? Yes, very much so. Okay? He's already skewing the question. He's putting an idea in your mind about it being important. Then he asks you if it is important. That may sway people from responding with a 2 or 3 to maybe a 4 or a 5, putting importance much higher than originally expected. Okay? So, leading question is the way you would say it. This is a leading question. You guys watch anything about law? Any law shows? Hear about leading questions where they're leading the witness? This would be a leading question. They're expecting you to say that it's important because he tells you that's important when he starts. Some ways to suggest the survey. There are many ways to, some ways to suggest. Suggest some ways to improve the survey. There are many ways to improve. Can you guys think of any? So one way would be randomly selecting people from the town. Randomly selecting people from town. That was the major one. I was hoping most of you would just choose that because these people aren't randomly selected. So, some of you guys said changing the number, so maybe making it from 1 to 10 instead. Which then, I asked the question to you, why not just make it from 1 to 100, 1 to 1,000,000? As I make that number bigger, what happens? Last question. A local politician goes door to door on a street. He asks each person who answers the door to this question. In light of the many recent hit and runs on our street, should the city install speed bumps? Of the 300 houses, 200 people answer the door. Of the 200 people he talked to, 100 answer the question. 80 of them agree that the city should install speed bumps. At the next city council meeting, the politician says 80% of people in our city support installing speed bumps. Question A, is the sample large enough? Is it representative of the population? Explain your answer. So Mark discussed that he only got answers from 100 people. What was important is the size of the city. We don't technically know, so repeat it again. If there were only 300 houses in this whole city, and he got 100 answers, that's roughly a third of the population. That's a very good sample size, a third of a city's population. Now, Mark used some logic. Definition of the word city. Anyone know exactly usually what that means around in population? 500,000. I think you're looking at minimum 500,000 people in a city. So in terms of sample size, I would have really liked it if you linked it to that. The city the word city usually means very large population. And this guy only got 100 people surveyed out of maybe 500,000. We assume when he says he got 100 answers, it's 100 people. You're right. In a house, you could have got more than one answer. Okay? So in terms of sample size, what I wanted you to do is just relate it to overall size. You might have said it's valid because for all we know, there's only 300 people. But if you linked it to city, saying that cities usually have a very large population, that makes it invalid. That was what I was looking for. Okay? Invalid because only 100 people of a large city. Many of you guys related to the 300 houses on the street. Again, if there's only 300 houses, that's actually a good sample size, a third of the population. So we're going to say a logical answer here is a city has a large population. Large pop. So not large enough. Alex? Okay, so we just mentioned that if the speed bumps are pertaining just to the street, so people on that street, if it was only affecting them, again, that's a third of that street's population, like we just discussed. That's a pretty good sample size. Here's a question though. Speed bumps on a street, do they only affect people on that street? What if it was Yonge Street and we interviewed a third of the population of Yonge Street and they all said yes? What about the rest of the people in the city? Does it still affect them who drive down Yonge Street every day? So is it valid to say that 80% of the city's population agrees with it? Not quite. Yeah, he didn't quite ask the whole city. He needed a larger sample size, which is one of our key words. The sample size wasn't large enough to say that 80% of the city agreed. 80% of that street agreed. If he had said that, that might be more logical. So is it representative of the population? It's not representative of a city's population. Okay? Question 2. Is this question biased at all? Can you guys see any bias in this question? Alex. So, first bias in the question is it's a leading question again. He starts off by saying, in light of the many recent hit and runs on our street. So maybe the street has had a couple of hit and runs. Clearly people on that street are going to want speed bumps because it's their family, their neighbors who are being affected by these hit and runs. Really everyone should be concerned if there are people hitting and running in a city. It's terrible. But there is a bias on the street, especially in the question, because he starts the question by saying many people are getting injured because there are essentially no speed bumps. Okay, so we have a leading question. Anything else that is a bias? I actually just talked about it. A, it's a leading question. We discussed that because he starts off with hit and runs. Should the city install speed bumps? Not only that, he interviews people. Where does it say it? On our street. So he interviews people from that specific street where there have been hit and runs, okay? So you're going to have a biased vote because of their location. They're on a street that has this issue, so clearly they're going to vote yes, okay? Again, it's an important issue. I'm not trying to make that not important, but clearly they're going to vote yes if this is occurring on their street.
Would you also vote speed bumps on your street?
Last part of the question says, is this conclusion valid? We would assume it's not for several reasons. We're going to say no. If you put no and that was it, you did not get any communication marks. Okay? No, not valid because. I think you guys learned how to put a sentence question together in like grade 2. A could have been sample size. Sample size, leading question. Biases. There's a bias in the question as well as a bias with the respondents. People owning houses, they're going to have a specific view on this.